Thank you. Next up on our agenda, we have Mr. Andrew Marsh, who is chair of the Oxford Cultural Council, and I'd like to invite Mr. Marsh up to the table. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chairman Andrew J Marsh of the Oxford Cultural Council. I come before the committee today for two reasons. First, and Chairman Bitar and I have spoken about this via email, the Oxford Cultural Council is looking to distribute flyers to the Oxford Public Schools informing teachers and other applicants of our annual grant application process when the new school year begins in September. I've been informed by the former chairwoman that this was practiced in previous years, and Dr. Garceau, I'll send an official email to you when I get home tonight, just to make an official request to you.
Thank you.
But I wanted to know if the committee had any concerns or objections to this proposed practice, and I brought copies of flyers from 2 years ago for the members of the school committee, so they could have a point of reference. I'd be happy to hand those out to you when I'm done with my speech and when we're done with question and answer. Second, I would like to announce that the Oxford Cultural Council is looking for new members. Since the Oxford Public Schools received roughly 49% of our fiscal year 2016 funding, we thought it'd be beneficial to both the public schools and the Cultural Council if someone from within the public schools, for example, a teacher, would apply to be one of our new members. Summarize, to apply, an interested applicant has to fill out the community forum application and bring it to the town manager's office. After submission, it will be considered by the Board of Selectmen, who will vote to confirm the appointee during one of the selectmen meetings. I would encourage the school committee to encourage any staff who might be interested in serving to apply, and to forward any questions he or she might have to oxfordculturalcouncil@gmail.com. I'll now take any questions you have for me. I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I yield back.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Marsh? Mr. Coonan?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marsh, for this very informal presentation this evening. That this is money that sometimes with grants, as you know, being the chairman, is that you've got to give the money out. And it's great for you to come in and to not only promote your cultural council, but the great things that they can do with this money. Where if no one applies, no one's going to get those, and the money just goes back to the general fund of the town. So it's wonderful that you're coming in. Thank you for taking your time to introduce yourself again to the board and to show what the Cultural Council does. Thank you.
Of course, and I pride myself in ensuring effective communication between our body and any body that we may be in contact with.
Thank you. Mr. Spitz?
I would just think for the viewers at home, could you just give us a quick synopsis as to what the Cultural Council does? What do they actually bring to the town so that people are aware of the good things that you guys do? I think it's great to get the word out there so that you might get some more volunteers.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So basically, every year, the Massachusetts Cultural Council gets a certain amount of taxpayer money to spend on like arts and humanities and interpretive sciences projects, and the way that's divvied out is that each town or sometimes a couple of towns will share what's called a local cultural council, and so each cultural council will get appropriated a certain amount of money that's based off of the local aid formula. For example, this past cycle, Oxford got around $6,500. And so basically, every year, once we get those appropriations in, we basically accept grant requests from individuals and nonprofit organizations, or schools as well, grant requests for projects that fulfill those criteria. And so our job is basically, with the money we have, we have to prioritize which grants get full funding, which grants get no funding, and which ones get partial funding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Bitar, if I can clarify on that? Well, now that you have here and you have a captive audience, because you are giving away money. So you're giving away money. Now, any inside tips of what would make a project higher on on your funding list, and I'm sure you have a rubric on how you allocate the monies. What would be a typical type project that would receive higher type funding than another project?
Okay, so a higher type funding, one of the biggest criteria is basically how many people it serves. So basically, the greater amount of people a project serves, the more likely it is to get closer to what we're asking for. And it's also a lot easier for us to give a project full funding if it's a relatively small request. Like example, like this past cycle, we agreed to automatically fully grant all requests that were $500 or less. But like there were like a couple of big items, like a field trip request for. I don't remember the exact one, but it was asking for a lot of money, and we simply could not fund all of it and be fair to everyone else. And so basically, as long as the requests are reasonable, we'll do the best we can.
Wonderful, thank you.
With regards to members, you mentioned that you were looking for members. Who is eligible? Do you have to be a resident of the town of Oxford?
I don't have every guideline memorized by heart, but I think that's the general rule. I'd have to check with the state to see if that is an actual rule or law, but I think that's the general guideline. Other than that, the only other rule I can think of at the top of my head is that you can't be an elected official. Because I think that creates too much of a conflict of interest, and the State Cultural Council just decided to enact that rule. That's basically how a friend of mine who was on another cultural council basically found out she couldn't serve on it anymore because she was elected a library trustee. And it wasn't until we went to basically a big convention at the State House that someone from the State Cultural Council, when she mentioned it, told her, "I'm sorry, you can't be on that anymore." But she found the loophole, so now she's an ex officio member, which means she can't vote. Apparently, she's more busy now that she's ex officio.
Very good, Andrew.
Well, I think if we try and recruit a member of the school community, obviously we have several staff members who do live in Oxford, but we do have several that don't. So I believe on the town's application form that you have to be a resident, but maybe we can clarify that and let everybody know that you're looking for some members. So are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Marsh?
If I might make one last recommendation in regards to the recruiting, I think one of the best areas to recruit from in terms of the school staff is basically find out if there's like a teacher in the school that applies for one of our grants on a fairly regular basis. You know, if there's a common name, then I think they would be a great addition. That's just my view.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for coming in this evening, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.